Want to know how elite tax advisors win the due diligence game to satisfy ultra-high net worth clients who expect the very best? Welcome to the Due Diligence Project podcast, where you get a chance to learn from the elite CPAs, virtual family office professionals, and tax specialists who are doing just that. We'll uncover their insider secrets on how they are dominating their competition, vetting new ideas, and supercharging their due diligence process to deliver extraordinary results. Bringing his 25 plus years of experience with top tax professionals across the country, please welcome your host, Alex Sunkin.
Welcome and thank you for joining the Due Diligence Project podcast. We are so excited to have today's guest, Mr. Dale Spradling, an elite CPA, virtual family office with over 10 years inside the IRS. He's been working with ultra affluent business owners and ultra wealthy families. And today we're going to find out how he does due diligence, how he delivers unique value to these families and business owners. We are so excited to dive deeply inside your brain as far as you allow us to extract what it is that you're doing. Most people aren't aware what happens inside of virtual family offices, what happens with when you take an elite CPA who spent so much time inside the IRS, now has been working outside the IRS as a traditional elite CPA who's evolved into a virtual family office with best-in-class peer-reviewed resources, and now you're delivering massive value to business owners. But let's just start. Describe what it is you do, the people you serve, and the kind of situations they find themselves in when they come to you.
Well, I think I've done everything a CPA can do. I started out in the IRS, went to work for one of what we call the big 8 firms, had my own firm, was a college professor, been a CFO, back and forth again, so forth and so on. The main gig that I do now is that as I'm older, I'm a concierge CPA. I'm an army of one, so to speak. What I do is I serve a small group of elite clients. And the number one rule for accepting a new client is I have to like you. It doesn't mean I have to like your personality, your politics, or anything. But what it does mean is, are you trainable? Can you listen? And the whole concierge approach is a flat fee, annual basis, and clients can call me. I encourage them to call me. That's what I want them to do. I want them to call me first before they do anything stupid, right? And so we don't have to undo it later. And, it gets away from the old model of CPAs and lawyers billing by the hour, and client calls up with a question, and then they get a bill for asking a question. I think the classic I had once was I questioned a bill from a law firm, and you can probably predict what happened. I got a bill for questioning the bill. Okay. So that's the whole thing about the concierge thing, is to stay away from that. It has its ups and downs. It's basically, since it's just me, there's only so much of me that can go around. And, but it works for a small group. And the other big initiative is this VFO Hub, which I really, really enjoy because it's innovative strategy for saving tax dollars that really do work. And when you think back into the evolution of family offices, they kind of actually started out as a way of teaching young adults how to deal with wealth. Because my wife never believes this, but I'll tell her all the time, it's actually when you're born into wealth, there are issues with that. She doesn't believe it, but at any rate, the thing of it is, and what unfortunately most family offices now have sort of evolved in sort of what amounts to private hedge funds. Yeah. That there's a focus on the money management, the finances, private equity, and that's all well and good. And I guess I should state at the beginning, there's one thing I don't do, which is manage money. I'll give you my 2 cents worth, but I don't actually manage the money part. I want to create a Berlin Wall between that. And
smart.
The whole thing with this is, with the VFO Hub idea, particularly working virtually, and I'm pretty proud of myself, even in the concierge practice. I'm going to guess about half my clients I've never met. And we use Zoom, we do this, and it worked great.
And with technology, you can solve them from anywhere that you can connect, just like this.
And being able to connect with people, dealing virtually and understanding back and forth works very, very well. And the VFO idea is to work with existing advisors.
Dale, you mentioned something interesting. You said, you look for clients, you're very particular, and you look for clients that are teachable.
Right.
And which is really interesting because most people wouldn't think that, hey, when I'm looking for an elite family office or elite CPA and I've got a huge tax problem or ongoing tax concerns, or I'm looking for a point person to run my family office, the idea that me as a client, I would have to be teachable, that would never cross my mind. So tell me about why you think that's important.
Well, frankly, like I said, I'm 67. I don't have that much more time to waste. I've worked with a lot of people and made a lot of money and this type of thing. And it's just that, and I'm not perfect by any means. I'm a human being, give and take. Occasionally I make mistakes or something happens or whatever.
I've never seen one, but yeah, you can say that. Go ahead.
Well, my job is to live in the details. But it is the type of thing to where if you're going to try to help someone, it helps if they listen to what you're saying. They don't have to necessarily agree with it, but listen to it.
They have to participate, Dale. Don't they have to participate? They have to do something. It's not just like, hey, Dale, fix this, and you do everything. They have to participate in the decision making. Here's where I'm going with this. We just recently noticed that, 91 of the Fortune 500 companies, the most profitable companies in the world, zeroed out their taxes. And the other 409 of the most profitable companies in the world did not. So they had massive tax consequences. And basically less than 20% of the Fortune 500 companies appear to have amazing tax planning teams that know how to zero out their returns. But today I saw something interesting out of Amazon. Apparently, this is the first year in many, many years that Amazon actually had to pay a tax. Now, let me make this point. Their percentage of net income that they paid in taxes was a whopping 1.2%. The reason I mention it, so you got Amazon and 90 other Fortune 500 companies that are either zeroing out or reducing their taxes under 1.5% of net income. I bet you that they are participating with their tax planning teams to create those types of results. They're not sitting back and going, here, I wonder what my tax return is going to look like this year. Oh, you zeroed that out. That's great. I bet you there was some back and forth planning that started maybe earlier in the year.
Right. And that's one of the reasons, again, I went with the concierge approach with a small group of clients. And that is, it is interactive and it's back and forth. The more I understand them, the more they understand me. And one of the things, if I have a gift, it's trying to simplify the complex. I try to break it down and say, okay, in simplicity, this is what we're doing. And there's always tons of detail. One of the things I have to get over people when you come to innovative tax planning, and I can assure you Amazon is innovative, is the question of simplicity versus complex. Everybody hates complex. All right, all these companies and all these forms and have to do all these things and stuff. And they all hate it. And it's funny, you're talking about 7 figures sometime in taxes, and clients grab about it. Well, I have to pay $1,000 for that tax return. They focus on the little thing, and the reason that they do that is because they understand that. They don't understand the bigger picture of what's going on. And I have clients that want simple. Mm-hmm. And I'll just tell them, fine, you're making my job easy. You're going to pay more taxes than you should. But if you want simple and your risk threshold is such that you don't want to take a chance, even though I don't take chances, that's fine. I'm as long as you understand what we're doing here. And I learned early on, you deal with clients that come in and say, okay, I don't want to pay a penny in taxes. Okay, fine. And then when the IRS shows up, they're just they're just melting on the floor. And so again, it's sort of an understanding. It's a relationship and understanding of how these things fit. The VFO hub. I don't know. Have you ever counted how many ideas you have?
We just keep getting them. Every time we count, it's like a week later we have 3 or 4 more.
But to look at the portfolio of ideas here and say, okay, Joe over here might be interested in this, might be interested in that, and so forth and so on. So it's really, again, it's not a personality thing. I've had some pretty major throwdowns with clients before. I mean, we're talking about heads going into sheetrock, but we're interacting, we're talking to each other.
We've seen you deliver massive value, massive client, massive tax mitigation strategies, massive value for clients. And the thing that strikes me about you is your attention to detail. And I want to mention, the reason we're interviewing you today is not just because you're an amazing virtual family office and a lead CPA, but you're also an active participant in the due diligence project. And you're also a thought leader in our community, meaning when you look at strategies, not only as a CPA and a virtual family office are you going to do your own due diligence, but you are really stress testing some of these strategies, going really, really deep, forcing us to get you on the phone with some of our experts, some of our attorneys to take these strategies and rip them open, pull them apart, and then put them back together. And then you offer some other feedback based on all of your experience inside the IRS, outside the IRS. And we really value that. So can you talk a little bit about how you do due diligence independently and then how you're doing due diligence as part of our due diligence project community?
Well, I guess my number one rule is I don't trust anybody except myself.
Okay.
I don't care who said it, whatever. I do deep dives. And typically what I do is instead of reading what someone else has written about an idea, I actually go to the tax code, the IRS regulations, the court cases.
I'm going to interrupt you real quick. The CPAs traditionally, this is how they think about tax strategies. They only trust themselves. They're going to want to do their own independent due diligence. And the only other group that reminds me of are traders who trade and put massive amount of money at risk. And they're not going to do that if they just going off of what someone else says. They're going to do that off of their own gut. Those are the only two animals, traders trading their own money or a firm's money, making those decisions, and then CPAs looking at tax strategies, doing their own independent due diligence, going, I don't trust anyone, I'm going to trust myself with this. And that really struck me when you just said that. And I think that's one of the things that really attracts us to you is and other CPAs that make up this community, but you're not a traditional CPA. You're not a typical CPA because you really go to the nth degree in terms of detail orientation.
Frankly, most clients see CPAs as a pain in the ass because we are. I mean, we live in a detail world and we have to take these big picture ideas guys like you come up with, and we actually have to do the detail, right? And you have to get it right as best you can. And the difficult part about tax planning strategies is typically there's very little to go on. Just a deep dive into it to the point of where, when I'm dealing with a client, what I'll do is I'll explain as much detail as they want. And typically they don't want, some do. Some really, really want the detail, whatever. What I'll typically do is just dive into it and just at some point I'll just tell them, look, just trust me. I've looked at this. If I say it works, okay, my reputation's on the line. You can sue me. You can do all these types of things. I'm a CPA, right? I'm real. I exist. So, and I don't do flaky things. Okay. And frankly, the whole legal profession, CPA profession, got spanked about, 15 years or so ago when firms were pushing the tax shelters, and frankly, they were pushing the boundaries. Let me restate that. They blew up the boundaries.
Dale, do you think back then when some of these questionable strategies were being recommended by large CPA firms, do you think those CPA firms had something like the due diligence project where there's over 200 independent CPAs like you going, I trust only myself. I'm going to do my own due diligence. And then looking at some of those strategies that somehow got recommended and caused a lot of problems. Would the due diligence project have been a way to eliminate some of that risk back from back then?
Sure. It's very simple as to what happened. It's called sales. Firms needed profit, needed money, and that sort of thing, and the law firms too. And basically, somebody came up with the idea, and everybody else just sold it. Mm. And things got, while there may have been some basis for some of the things that were done, some actual technical arguments, some of the things that ended up being done were just too many of them. And kind of ironic, what happened now is these big firms are now, gun shy. I like to use innovative versus aggressiveness, because aggressiveness sort of implies that I'm cutting it fast to the bone. I don't play the audit roulette game. I always tell clients, just assume you're going to get audited. It's part of the process. It's what, the more money you have, the greater the chances you're going to get audited anyway. And so just get over it. I'll never forget back when I joined the IRS when I was 25. And one of my first cases was this guy who was about my age. And so there was the father, the son. It's funny because I sat down across from the young man I was auditing. And I could tell he'd already been drinking because it was already early in the morning. Wow, okay. And the dad was like putting his arm around the son saying, son, this is just part of the process. This is what you're going to go through. It's no big deal, and so forth and so on. And so you learn that, and it just accept that you're going to be audited and just get over with it. And so the key is understanding the client's comfort level. What are they comfortable with? And you have to sort of feel them out a little bit, because everyone says, I don't want to pay any taxes. I hate the IRS. I hate the federal government. They just waste my money and so forth and so on. But you get down to the nitty gritty and say, okay, what's your comfort level? Can you sleep at night? And because, even though I've tried my best to explain all this to you, if you're still uncomfortable with it, don't do it. It's just that simple.
Now you take those extra steps to actually explain, exactly how the plane takes off and how it lands in Hawaii, and you love actually understanding all the details. And some of your clients appreciate that. Some of your clients they all appreciate you knowing it for sure. Do all of them want to know how the plane takes off and how it lands, or do they just want to know that they're going to land in Hawaii safely?
Right. And one of the advantages of my current approach with, the concierge approach or the VFO approach is I don't have any overhead. Okay. A few computers, this type of thing. I don't have any partners anymore. I don't have staff. I don't have all these other things that are just sort of distractions. And I don't have to close deals. I guess I'm semi-retired, so to speak. I'm doing this because I want to do it. And that's what I always tell professionals. The number one thing you can do is control your overhead. Because if you get your overhead too big, and it's like you've got to do so much business every month just to pay the rent. Okay, not to mention salaries and everything else. So it's it's not a model that works for everybody. Obviously, we need full service CPA firm, full service law firm. That's what I like about the VFO, is coming in and working with these advisors, not against them.
Let's talk about, look, you mentioned one thing, you're a one-man show, you've got low overhead. But the reality is you're not a one-man show. The reality is you're a virtual family office. You have access to the best attorneys, the best specialists, the best resources in the world. They're just not W-2 employees working for you in your family office. Now, you've left the big firms, they formed their own small firms, and we are all connected virtually. And so you really, even though you're a one-man show and your clients love you and trust you, and that's what they pick you, and your future clients already picked you. They don't want to meet a bunch of people. They want one point of contact because that's really efficient. That's what Amazon has shown us. We just need the Amazon app, click, click, click. peer review, have access to anything and everything under the sun, click, click. It's at my house in 8 hours. Soon it's going to be 1 hour. So you have that ability to do due diligence through the due diligence project and the virtual family office hub. Your clients don't even need all that. They just need one text function, which is you. How does a big traditional firm compete with you? Whether a big CPA firm with big fancy offices and a lot of overhead, how do those kind of structures, traditional structures, compete with your one-man show, as you say it?
Well, I've always told people I may be the world's best consultant, but I know I'm the world's worst employee. And because the way I compete, just I'm very honest, I'm very open. I'll say what needs to be said. If you get mad at that, fine. In other words, I don't have the problem with the big firm approach or some of these big institutional family offices is they've created silos. There's another bureaucracy. There's another. It's not my idea, and plus they always want to be captive. They always want to, it's closed source. Whereas the VFO hub is completely open source. We don't sign non-compete with each other and this type of thing. It's all just it works on a trust basis.
Do what I like to, you're hitting on a point here that's really a sensitive point. I think it's also a very important point. I came from a world where I was a member of the Chicago Board of Trade, the Merck, and the CBOE, and these are three separate, different membership organizations of traders. I was an options trader, and you go to work every day. You go to the floors every day, and it's the same people every day, and it's a self-policing membership. So if I say bye and then I go, oh no, I didn't say that. Well, there's multiple people who saw me say bye. I have to honor that. That's a verbal contract. That's a serious contract. So someone saying buy or sell, it doesn't honor that. They're going to get thrown out. And it's a self-policing organization. So what I'm going to come in, and if they don't act properly, it's very, very lonely at the top. We have over 200 CPA firms and family offices. They're all going to know that this attorney or this specialist is acting weird or is not acting fairly, or this information travels very, very, very quickly. So you can come in and do whatever you want to do. Just know that it will get found out. And if you're doing a great job every single time, guess what? We're all communicating. And if you want to come in and do an amazing job or try to screw one of our virtual family offices, screw one of our CPA firms, that's not going to fly with us. So we're a self-policing organization, kind of like, on Amazon, you have a peer review, right? So this is what you're talking about, being open source, peer review, shining that light into this big dark hole of tax planning where no one knows how many pages are in the tax code. Tax attorneys are an unsolicited market. Due diligence is hard. You mentioned this, back in the day, the big firms 15 years ago, it was so hard, they just decided not to do it. They just said, hey, we're going to sell this thing. We're going to generate some revenues. No one actually did the due diligence properly. It caused major problems. Guess what? Due diligence is still hard. But as our community, we figured out a way to have independent members do that due diligence and share each independent member's feedback on all the strategies with the rest of the community. And that's how we're solving the due diligence is hard problem. And so now someone like you with this major attention to detail that really wants to put their best foot forward in everything they do, that's very, very proud of their work, that's going to explain everything they're doing to every one of their clients in detailed format. Now all of a sudden you have the ability to do something really, really special. Paint what we call, paint this perfect world picture that your clients are sharing with you. Hey, Dale, help me get to this perfect world. This is what I want it to look like. We've given you the brushes and the paints to paint this world. And tell us about that experience, your ability to go and take your life's work, your expertise, and help these business owners make a difference in their communities, in their families. Talk about that a little bit.
Part of the big problem, again, with the larger firms, even employees, is charging by the hour time when you're $500 or $1,000 an hour. And the key is actually the due diligence is important, but just as important is empathy. And that's what you need to understand what it is that your guy is looking for.
Right.
Because people will tell you something, oh, my taxes are too high. Well, there may really be something else going on. He and his wife can't agree on their will because they can't agree upon which kid gets what. There's all types of things in life that are happening here. And empathy requires time. One of the things that I do if I'm in an open-ended session with somebody, with some client, I like to get the client, wife, advisors, whatever, into a lot of times just go into a hotel or in a conference room. And we have what I call is a where does it hurt meeting. And what that means is, when you go in the doctor's office and you're sitting on the table, bare ass with your little gown on, the doctor finally comes in. And does the doctor tell you where he went to school or where he interned? But CPAs do, and lawyers do. We're proud of our credentials and what we've done and so forth and so on, right? Well, what does the doctor ask you? The doctor says, where does it hurt? And then the doctor shuts up and listens to what you say, then adds a few more questions, and just trying to draw out, okay, what's really happening here? And that's what I try to do with people, to spend the time necessary on the front end. And what I always tell clients, these where does it hurt meetings, I used to do them for free, but what I always tell clients is, I do them now refundable, is that if at the end of the day, if I can't suggest something to you that moves the ball up the field, I'm going to tell you that. If you're doing everything that needs to be done, I'm going to tell you. And
Dale, I'll tell you something right now. Your attention to detail and what you just described, empathy, asking questions, finding out where it hurts. I will tell you right now that 99% of CPA firms just don't do that, because for a million reasons. They don't have time. They have too many clients. They're focused on just producing tax return, financial statement. They are spread so thin, just trying to do the work of an accountant. What you're describing is not the work of an accountant. That is the accountants look backwards and they track everything. They put numbers in boxes. What you're describing really is the work of an elite family office leader that can only have a few clients to be able to have that kind of deep personal relationships with, to really find out.
And that's what the concierge part does. But the VFO hub allows me to expand off of that and work on a project type basis. I have one of my older clients, we don't really like each other all that much, but the relationship works well. So it's one of those type of situations where we're comfortable with each other. And that's the thing, is you establish a comfort level of, okay, see, a lot of wealthy people are used to being pitched. They're used to people selling them. They're used to people wanting their money and this type of thing. And what I'm trying to say to them is, okay, if I can, I want to help you. I charge for that, true. But if I can't help you, then I'm not. And so my setup allows me to do that. I can get up and walk away from the table and say, okay, fine. I can get a little theoretical sometimes. There's a book written by a guy named Alvin Toffler and called The Third Wave. And the book was published, I think, in 1980. And he basically predicted the effects of the internet. And the thing that he said back in the late 70s is that what's going to happen is decentralization of information. It's all going to, when you look at there's farmers, the first wave, there's the industrial wave, the second wave, and the third wave being information-based. Well, the industrial age was the concentration of information inside the corporation. The corporation had the information on how to make things cheaply and all that kind of good stuff. Well, so what we're looking at now is decentralization. You don't have to be a big four firm anymore to be state of the art. There's a lot of talent out there, but the key is the information is there if you have the curiosity to follow up on it.
Do you think the traditional CPA firm has the time and or curiosity to do what's necessary to deliver the kinds of results that you and your firm are able to deliver?
Some have the curiosity, but none of them have the time. I mean, I was one, so I know this. Your entire day consists of trying to just put out all these fires, and more fires keep coming in.
This has been amazing. We may have to have another interview with you just to capture more of your wisdom. I think our audience really got a chance to sense your uniqueness, to show you, our audience can now appreciate you a little bit the way we appreciate you. You've really shared something. But as we leave, before we go, you want to give us something that, your clients don't know about you that's kind of interesting or really interesting?
Believe it or not, I'm an introvert. I've had to learn how to put myself out there. Okay. I used to do a lot of public speaking, and so you sort of learn how to do those type of things. But if I had my way, I've got back into fly fishing.
I don't know about that. Listen, Dale, I could talk to you for hours. We're going to schedule another one of these, but I think today this is a good soundbite. This is a good enough podcast to give our audience a chance to chew on this, to really dive in. What we've learned here is you are a due diligence monster. You invest a lot of time in the minute details of due diligence. You have not completed due diligence on every single strategy inside the due diligence project, inside the Virtual Family Office Hub. We don't even know how many strategies are inside of it, but we've shared with you a few of our strategies, and the kind of due diligence that you've done on those strategies is extremely impressive to me personally. So we really value that. And you know what? Our entire community values that. And so there's other strategies that you haven't even looked at yet where our other 200 plus members have gone through, and just because they're also CPAs, they only care about what they have to think. They don't care about what anyone else thinks, for good measure and good reason. They're doing the same level or trying to have an equivalent level of detail orientation to completing their due diligence like you. So we are really happy to have you part of our community. We're really excited about what we're doing as a community, and I think your clients should be very, very lucky. Or should know that they're extremely lucky to have someone like you making sure that everything is perfect, making sure that you're finding better situations in the future. Today was a lot of fun for me personally. Thank you so much for being a guest on the Due Diligence Project podcast, my friend.
Thank you, Alex.
Thanks, guys. And thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great rest of your week. Bye now.
That's all for this episode of the Due Diligence Project podcast. Be sure to visit duediligenceproject.com to access the resources we have available for qualified CPAs and family office leaders. Our mission at the Due Diligence Project is to help you deliver more significance and value to your very best clients while shifting your traditional practice into the firm of the future.